All right. Well, welcome. This is another interview in my Gold Nuggets for Athletes series, and I'm so thrilled to have Jamie with me today. She is incredible. She's a gold medalist, and she's also a transformational coach, and that's how Jamie and I actually met. So welcome, Jamie. Thank you so much
Thank
for
you,
being
Erica.
here.
Thank you. I'm excited.
Awesome. Me too. So I know you and I were talking about some of the things that kind of make somebody successful. And specifically, you and I were talking about athletes because we both serve and
hmm
support athletes. And so I would love to maybe have you share a little bit more about, what you've seen in terms of what can hold people back in their
For
success.
sure. For sure. Well, there's two things that we know for in order for an athlete to be success, and aptitude is one of them, but attitude is the other.
Mm,
And you assume that there's the aptitude, right? The talent. They have that talent, and part of the attitude is speaking and using positive languaging with yourself, self-affirming thoughts and positivity. We
mhm,
know this because motivational speakers talk about it. Tony Robbins, anyone that we all follow and love, they always talk about the power of positivity. But there's another factor that I have discovered personally that I really wasn't aware of until this summer, actually, 2020, and
mhm,
that is your belief system. And I think this is what not only holds amateur athletes back, but then when pro athletes retire,
mhm,
or athletes go into retirement, this is where it kind of gets you. Because when you're achieving great success, or when you're on your journey of achieving and you're working towards your big goals, I found even like my just being positive with myself was helpful enough. But when I retired, this is when I found that my belief system really got me. And I started having really negative thoughts about myself because I now wasn't on a podium. I wasn't in front of an audience that was applauding me. I wasn't
mhm,
winning gold medals. I wasn't making the money I was making. And so I had thoughts like, oh, well, nobody cares what you have to say now. You're imposter. You're not important, you're not worthy, you're a loser. Like anytime I would make a mistake, I would hear these thoughts. And it sounds really harsh, but if anybody listening right now can relate, you know exactly what I'm talking about.
mhm,
They just show up. And so I dove really into that because I was curious as to why I'm having these thoughts. People look at me and go, well, you're an Olympic gold medalist, like your life is perfect. And I go, yeah, it my life, or like looking at it from the outside in, looks
mhm,
perfect, but I'm
mhm,
really struggling. I'm struggling with my identity and who I am, and clearly there's a lack of self-love here.
mm,
And it's, how we talk about in our coaching, it's like putting that mask on or the armor on and just going out and not being authentic. And that's kind of what
mhm.
was happening for me. I thought that this was who I am, but waking up every day and having these horrible thoughts in my head was really, they just hijacked me, and they were running my life. And
Mm,
I thought, well, if I'm going through this, I can only imagine how many other retired athletes are going through this, plus athletes. Like there's a lot of athletes that have the potential to make it further than they do. So what
mhm,
is it that's stopping them? I truly believe now, because we have lots of training like I said, positive thinking, lots of it, lots
mhm.
of psychology of in the moment thinking. But is it maybe that these athletes have these beliefs, negative belief systems that, um, are kind of running the show?
Yes. Well, and I think that I just want to, first of all, thank you for being so open and transparent about
Of
your, I mean,
course.
because I can relate to that, those limiting voices, exactly the ones that you said. I mean, and I think that they're more common. And what I've seen in my work with people too, because I was a therapist for 20 years before I became a coach, there's very few people who felt like they were worthy of
hmm
whatever. So even if you're having great success, if you've got that narrative in the background, you take away the success and then it's like, well, what's happening?
Exactly.
So that's so powerful, Jamie. I really appreciate you being so honest and open about it. So then what would you recommend if people are realizing like, okay, so I am noticing that there's a lot of these self-sabotaging, beliefs that are kind of running in the background, and like you were saying, like they're from your subconscious mind. Like if you had if you could,
Yeah.
reprogram it really easily, you can just snap your fingers and do that. But what would you
Yeah.
say for people who are noticing that that is something that's happening for them?
Well, I think now that I'm aware of it, there are programs out there, but of course, I'm now working with a gentleman from, I'm part of a team called Mile in Leadership International. And so we are doing the work of this. So we take people through a
Awesome.
program called Renew,
Mm,
and it's really about understanding how the brain works. The beginning of the 10-week course is understanding that, there's, you have your mind and then you have your brain. And I know people are like,
mhm.
well, it's the same thing. It's actually not.
Right.
I'm reading the book. Um, I'm reading so many books right now and I'm totally forgetting which one I'm talking about, but it's so powerful. It's like, talks about how you get hijacked and how these thoughts literally, like I just said earlier, are like running the show, and you're not
Mhm.
really aware of them until later in life. Because I can tell you right now, if you ask me these questions as an amateur athlete, I'd say you're crazy. Like, I
Yeah.
don't think that about myself. But these thoughts are developed from childhood, and even in your teenage years and adolescent years, there's something that's happened in your life, whether it's trauma or it's just an event that really affected you negatively, where you start developing these thoughts. So what we do is we take people through that process of understanding how your brain works. Um, and then we actually do talk about, you said self-sabotaging or sabotaging thoughts. There's, have you ever heard of positive intelligence? It's
Yeah.
Shirzad Shamin. He's amazing. Hard name to say.
Yeah.
He wrote the book on positive intelligence, and it talks about saboteurs and how we have all these saboteurs in our head that start to take over. And then there's the sage part of your brain, which is the part of you that really believes anything's possible and wants you to achieve. So it's really about getting your sage on stage to be able to overpower those really crappy thoughts. Not an easy thing. You and I both talked about that. It's not
Yep.
something that happens in 10 weeks like this,
Right.
but it's a process. So they learn about that. We do. I have a. It's called Points of View, and they're cards. They're therapy cards, or cards that my clients look at to really understand. It takes them back. It has nothing to do with them, but it takes them back to their childhood or their adolescent years, because what these pictures, these evocative photos do actually is it lights up that area in your brain where you actually tap into memory
Mm,
and emotion. Because typically, as you know, as a therapist, people tend to want to talk logically and rationally. So
yes.
when you look at these photos, it lights up that part of the brain, which really helps. So we do a few weeks of that, and then it's called rewriting your script. You rewrite a
Mm,
self-affirming script about how you're totally aware that you have some defective brain wiring, and it's been controlling you, but you no longer are allowing that. You're in control now. And then you write all your truths about yourself. And
awesome.
then you read this twice a day for 60 days. So that's a program that I have, but there are so many programs out there. So I would say that it's really important to reach out to somebody that is in neuroscience, because this is where you're going to tap into understanding how your brain works and how to
Mhm.
rewire your brain. And it sounds very Frankenstein-y, but it's not. It's
Right.
gentle. It's non-threatening. It's a positive way to get into that subconscious brain, as you said, and really tap into those hidden stories that you have. Because once we get in touch with those, it's very liberating, and it really now allows you to be aware that that's why I'm having these thoughts about
Mhm.
myself. So when you
Mhm.
have those thoughts, you can acknowledge them very differently, and it doesn't affect you the way it would have if you're not in touch with them. So I found it very liberating myself to go through this program.
Yeah.
I feel like that has been the most transformative experience I've ever had. I've done a lot
Awesome.
of dream building in my life, but this is really the one where I was like, okay, but I have little successes, but I found myself going back to the same spot, months later, and I'd be like, "What is wrong? And what is wrong?" And so I got really curious as to why I was experiencing that, and I
Mm.
realized it was because of my really negative belief about myself.
That's so powerful. And I mean, I just also I appreciate you and your transparency sharing like I went through this program and cuz
Hmm.
I think sometimes that could be a limiting thing too. Like it's okay for us as athletes to hire people to be our coaches and to make us better at our sports. But then
Hmm.
sometimes if it's something like a subconscious belief system or something like that, we feel like we should be able to figure that out on our own, which
Yeah.
that's not how it
No.
works, right?
Yeah.
And so
Yeah.
um I think that that's probably one of the most important things. It's like getting to the place where you can admit, like, you know what, I need
Yeah.
some support with this.
That was me this summer.
Me
I
too.
said, I can't live like this anymore. I was sabotaging my life. Like I was, I just noticed I'd have moments of just like, I would look at my therapist and say, there's this part of me that I don't like. And she's like, yeah, it's called your belief system. And you're so hard on yourself. And blah, blah, blah. So we had a massive discovery. And then I went into the neuroscience stuff. And that's where they
Mhm.
talk about it. I'm like, I've been waiting for this my whole, like, not my whole life, but a lot of my life going, what is wrong with me? But I just remember the
Yes.
name of the book. It's You're Not Your Brain.
Oh yeah,
So
nice.
yeah, so there's so many that you can read, but they're just so powerful to really
Mhm.
understand. And you know what it did for me was it gave me answers as to why
Mm.
I'm behaving this way, right? Because your belief system creates your behaviors today as an adult.
Yes.
And you're like, if you don't like the way you're behaving, for me, I was having, if I was triggered to bullying, for example, if I was excluded from something, I was bullied as a kid in school, like regularly, because I was short and I was doing something that people maybe were jealous of. I
Mhm.
don't know, but I was made fun of regularly. And so as an adult, when I would get excluded from something, I would just lose it. I
Yeah.
would freak out and I would start, yelling at somebody or freaking out, whatever. Anytime I was triggered to something that brought me back to being that kid again, I would get really upset, and it was
Mm.
really inappropriate behavior. And so I'm like, well, that's not serving me. Um, and if so, again, if you're listening to this, if you can relate, this is a signal, right? It's
Yes.
telling us that this is not who we are in our essence. Like that's not truly who I am. That's
Mhm.
my saboteurs getting me and running my life.
Yes. Well, and I love that too, because even by the mere fact that, and you know this, so I know this is not new information for you, but anybody who's listening, but the mere fact that you're kind of aware of what's happening in your mind, like the different thoughts, and you're like, no, that doesn't serve me, or I don't want to align with that. That's the first step, and that's the practice. And like, you don't have to be a slave to your thinking.
Mhm.
And that's what you're talking about. So I really, really love that. And I think that's so powerful, Jamie. So if people would love to get in contact with you, what would be the best way?
Well, I have a website. It's jamiesoleil.com, which is always a great landing place to email me from.
Okay,
Or, of course, on social media. I'm on Instagram. So, Jamie Soleil Life Coach, LinkedIn, which is
cool.
where you and I connected
Yeah.
again.
Yep.
Facebook, Jamie Soleil International. Yeah, that's pretty much it. I am on Twitter
Awesome.
too, but I don't really go there very much. And so yeah, I would say LinkedIn or Instagram or Facebook would be great, or email.
Okay, cool. Well,
Yeah,
I'll put your website in the comments, and so that
yeah.
people can
Thank
easily
you.
find you. And then I'll tag you when we get this posted on
Awesome.
Instagram, so that it's easy for people to find you as well. Um,
Excellent.
and I just, again, want to just thank you so much for being here with me, and sharing your experience and your knowledge. And I know you and I both have, Mary Morrissey in common as one of our mentors. But
Yeah.
it's just so cool to have you being in the arena with, continuing to help athletes, as we know there's no shortage of needs. So thank you so much for
Yeah.
taking your
Thank
time.
you. Thank you so much. And thanks for doing what you're doing. It's
You're
incredible.
welcome. Thanks, Jamie. Awesome. Well,
Thank
thank
you.
you, everybody. And we will talk to you next time.